Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here with another dailysheeple.com's news brief. Daily news brief, that is. And I want to start off today with a TDS article highlighting the report that the federal government is spying on us through at least 400 different cell phone site simulators in a massive $95 million Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security project. Now, we know and have known for a long time that the government spies on us. And unfortunately, it doesn't work both ways. I kind of wish it did, because I would love to know and be a fly on the wall in some of these closed-door meetings that they may have. But the fact that they're using these devices so extensively is really troubling. Now, I have some good news after we go over some numbers, because I think that, let's just say that there's a token effort underway in Congress to deal with the unconstitutionality of this, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it says, thanks to the leaks of NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden and others, the majority of America realizes our government's spying upon us through our cell phones. And of course, everybody now basically has a cell phone of some type, smartphone or otherwise. And that makes us all very vulnerable to this type of technology and just how we've become very dependent on this kind of technology. You know, the culture of convenience, of course, has spawned that reliance on technology, and for many good reasons. I mean, it does cut a lot of your time and save a lot of time being able to do things like, well, instead of having to hunt through a map to find a street, and you're using grid lines and all that kind of stuff. It's tough. Or even an atlas takes a lot of time to follow all that and mark it out. It's a lot easier just to tell Siri where you're going, and then boop, there's the directions. And oh, by the way, she'll tell you when to make a turn. Saves a heck of a lot of time. But when you do that, of course, your senses get dulled. Your ability to do things without that technology, you're not as sharp. And so it's important to exercise those types of skills. But because of the fact that everybody now has a cell phone, it really gives the federal government and their clandestine agencies insight into our lives. And it goes a lot deeper than looking for criminals. This via the Washington Times, it says, with 194 cell site simulators, the FBI has the most of any of the agencies identified as owning the devices, which often are referred to by brand, including Stingray and Hailstorm. The U.S. Marshals Service has 70. Immigration, Customs Enforcement has 59. Customs and Border Protection and the Drug Enforcement Agency each have 33. U.S. Secret Service has 32. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives have 13. And the Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigations Division, they have 2 of them. And the Treasury Inspector General, well, he has his own special one. Isn't that nice that IRS has a couple of these things? Suitcase-sized devices that, mimic our cell phone towers that we connect to, tricking phones into connecting to them. And then officers can drive around with one and scoop up neighborhoods full of data with them. Almost akin to like your smart meters. You know how electric companies now, they don't have to go and actually physically read the meter. They just got to drive by and boop, there it is. Together, the DHS and the DOJ are estimated to have spent $95 million on these devices. And what the report doesn't say is how many local and state law enforcement agencies are currently deploying them. But it is mentioned that the DHS gave $1.8 million in grants to those agencies towards their purchases. So other than wondering whether everyone realizes what a panopticon we're living in, does anyone know what happened to the Fourth Amendment anywhere? I mean, and why we continue to pretend that there's even a Fourth Amendment in this country? Even if, according to activist posts, the U.S. House Oversight Committee says that Stingray surveillance violates the Constitution. Of course it does. Do we need a House Oversight Committee to tell us that this technology violates and does fall into the category of unreasonable searches and seizures? Does it have to be, in this day and age, a physical search? Or does tapping the technology, now that everything's so wireless, does that not constitute unreasonable searches? Derek Brose over at Activist Post says the U.S. House Oversight and Government Reform Committee has released a damning new report on law enforcement's growing use of Stingray cell phones and their surveillance tools. On Monday, the U.S. House Oversight Committee, Government Reform Committee released a new report that calls for improved oversight and guidelines for law enforcement use of cell site simulators, not government, law enforcement use. Sometimes known as Stingrays, Stingray's the brand name of the popular cell site simulator manufactured by the Harris Corporation. The Harris Corporation, just so people know, has basically, it's not quite a monopoly on tactical communications, but it's close. It's close. They are by far and away the leader, industrial leader in electronic communications and tactical communications. That's not to say that Motorola is not a strong force. That's not to say General Dynamics may not be a strong. They are a strong force. However, they've ceded a lot of the market. The way Harris Corporation does it is very simple. You just kind of wow them by taking their technology and they sell it at an extremely low cost, basically cutting the legs out from underneath all their competition. And they get the government to agree on this because they just bid so low. And then what they do is they end up making money on the back end. It's a Microsoft model of business. Whereas you give them the operating system on the cheap. You give it to them at a very low cost, but on the maintenance is where you bang them good. And in this case, it's parts. So anytime a part fails and these radios are out of warranty or, you know, other pieces of this equipment are out of warranty, well, then you pay top dollar for it. Top dollar for it. To be able to repair them and keep them on. Or you can buy a new one. It's okay too. But using this model has made Harris Corporation very successful, very powerful, and has really grown them into the global leader in tactical communications for both military and law enforcement. Now, the Electronic Frontier Foundation describes Stingrays as a brand name of an IMSI, that's International Mobile Subscriber Identity Catcher, targeted and sold to law enforcement. A Stingray works by masquerading as a cell tower to which your mobile phone sends signals to every 7 to 15 seconds, whether you're on a call or not, and tricks your phone into connecting to it. This, of course, allows the officer who's in possession of the Stingray to know who, when, and to where you are calling, the precise location of every device within the range, and with the latest models, capture the content of your conversations. Because it wasn't enough that they knew where you were. Now, hey, why not we just record everything too? This is good. Now, as the use of Stingrays have grown quickly in the last 5 years, the public has largely remained in the dark as investigative journalists work to expose the technology. Now, it needs to be understood that all this committee's doing right now is discussing this. This isn't going to the congressional floor. This isn't going to be voted on as some sort of resolution. But what they did say is that Congress should establish a legal framework that governs government agencies, commercial entities, and private citizens' access to and use of geolocation data, including geolocation data obtained by the use of a cell site simulator. This was written by Representative Jason Chaffetz, Utah Republican, and Elijah Cummings. Holy moly. From Maryland. Who knew? The committee also called attention to the likely unconstitutionality of the use of Stingray surveillance when they said this in their report, quote, while law enforcement agencies should be able to utilize technology as a tool to help officers be safe and accomplish their missions, absent proper oversight and safeguards, the domestic use of cell site simulators may well infringe upon the constitutional rights of citizens to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, as well as the right to free association. Duh. All they're doing right there is stating the obvious. That doesn't mean it's going to change anything. One would hope it would, but not so much. Now, something that they don't understand, a lot of people don't understand. Harris Corporation requires anybody to sign non-disclosure agreements for anything that they do related to their stuff. It's not just Stingray. if you deal with Harris Corporation and you need to deal with them on a level where you're conducting any sort of business or require any information about their technology, number one, it's all proprietary because they're a private corporation and they have not sold that technology to the federal government. They basically, what they'll do is they sell it rights to operate each piece of equipment, and then they sell the ability to operate that equipment. And everybody that deals with Harris Corporation, from their piddly-pooest little radio up to these Stingrays, have to sign non-disclosure agreements to work with them. So it's not just Stingray, just so everybody knows. But it's true that this is most certainly an infringement on domestic soil. See, they were using these Stingrays overseas extensively. And it helped clandestine and special forces avoid a lot of IEDs and things of that nature because they were able to seek out and they were able to see where these cell phones were sitting that triggered IEDs. So they're very useful in some applications. However, certainly in the domestic arena, it's overstepping its bounds. And that's not the only place where government here recently has overstepped its bounds. According to the Washington Free Beacon, Congress is saying that the Obama administration fired a top scientist to advocate climate change plans. Get this. And I know people are going to be surprised. So just bear with me here, folks, because I know this is going to drop you. The jaw's going to drop to the floor. You've never heard anything like this before. But a new congressional investigation, according to the Washington Free Beacon, has determined that the Obama administration fired a top scientist and intimidated staff at the Department of Energy in order to further its climate change agenda. This, according to a new report that alleges the administration, that's right, ordered top officials to obstruct Congress in order to forward this agenda. Say it ain't so. Representative Lamar Smith of Texas, chair of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, released a wide-ranging report on Tuesday that showed how senior Obama administration officials retaliated against the leading scientists and plotted ways to block a congressional inquiry surrounding key research into the impact of radiation. If you go over to the Department of Energy, or let's just say make a Google search and go DOE space ARM, it will bring you to their atmospheric radiation measurement page. And that, my friends, is where you find a lot of the chemtrail and aerosol data will also be stored along with your climate data. Because oftentimes, and I know it sounds crazy, oftentimes they spray that nanoparticulate up there to see what effects that's having, the radiation of the sun and radiation in general have on this nanoparticulate. Of course, it has many purposes, but this is one. And you can go and see it. If anybody needs any evidence that chemtrailing exists, you need not go any further than your own government to have all the data you need to give to somebody that says, well, I don't believe that. That's just conspiracy theory. Well, last time I checked, the Department of Energy is not conspiracy theory. It is a branch of the federal government. So, yes, it actually exists. Put the tinfoil away, sir. Put the tinfoil away. So it just goes without saying, they'll stop at nothing. Now, this is the Department of Energy, not a place where you'd expect whistleblowers and people to be harassed, fired for not putting out, numbers. But this goes to show you the heart of corruption, that corruption gets into the very heart and down as low as it goes in every branch of federal government. I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times. It made me sick, and I'm glad I'm not a part of it anymore. Glad I'm not a part of it anymore. All I can say is that I hope and I pray that if Donald Trump does anything while he's in office, it's to clean up civil service. It is so completely disgusting and broke that you'd be appalled. And there are more people working for the federal government than we have in our manufacturing sector. That, my friends, is unbelievably sad even in this day and age. So let's just keep things in perspective. Very unbelievable. And then, of course, another avenue that I would hope President Trump has some success in, and it looks like he's getting off on the right foot to begin with, is foreign policy. And Pat Buchanan over at Buchanan.org, you see him on TV, he wrote a quick little piece, The Real Saboteurs of a Trump Foreign Policy. He says the never-Trumpers are never going to surrender the myth that Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the hacking of Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, and the DNC to defeat Clinton and elect Donald Trump. Their investment in that myth is just too huge. For Clinton and her campaign, it's the only way to explain how they booted away a presidential election even Trump thought he had lost in November. To the mainstream media, this is the smoking gun in their Acela Corridor conspiracy to delegitimize Trump's presidency. Incoming Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer sees Russian hacking as a way to put a cloud over the administration before it begins. But it is the Uber hawks hereabouts who are after the really big game. They seek to demonize Putin as the saboteur of democracy, someone who corrupted an American presidential election to bring about victory for a useful idiot whom Clinton calls Putin's puppet. If the war party can convert this fake story into the real story of 2016, then they can scuttle any Trump effort to attain the rapprochement with Russia that Trump promised to try to achieve. And if they can stigmatize Trump as Putin's president and Putin as America's implacable or implacable enemy, then the Russophobes are back in business because, McCarthyism didn't give us enough lessons learned, right? The 1945 to 1955 Red Scare? No, we didn't learn enough from that. Lindsey Graham, they need to pay a price. Just see, I tell you what. Crippling sanctions would abort any modus vivendi and any deal with Russia before Trump could negotiate one. Trump would have to refuse to impose them and face the firestorm to follow. Why, the war party's out to dynamite anyone that's with Russia before it begins. Among the reasons Trump won is that he promised to end U.S. involvement in the costly, bloody, and all these endless foreign wars in the Middle East that Bush and Obama brought us and the neocons relish in to reach a new understanding with Russia and Putin. And that's the way it should be. I'll be honest with you, folks. I mean, think about it. The Founding Fathers said it best. Trade with all, ally with none. Look, we can all have love, peace, and harmony, and everybody can have a piece of the pie. That's not a problem. It's all good in the hood. But look I don't need to be your ally when it comes to you getting attacked. If you need help, okay, you can come and ask. That's all good. But I'm not going to bind myself to any treaty that's going to entangle me in any foreign war that I might get mixed up in that's against the will of the American people. Why, that's just silly. Could you imagine a president actually saying that? It'd be great. Now, he continues to say, he says, though Julian Assange says WikiLeaks did not get the emails from Russia, this, of course, has to be investigated. Did Russia hack the DNC's email system and John Podesta's email account? Did Putin direct the emails be provided to WikiLeaks to disrupt democracy or defeat Hillary Clinton? Clinton says Putin had it in for her because she believes, that she was behind the whole. He believes she was behind the whole anti-Putin demonstration back in Moscow in 2011. Remember Pussy Riot and all that stuff? Yeah, that was all Clinton's fault. But if there's to be an investigation of clandestine interference in politics and elections of foreign nations, let's get it all out on the table, right? Because the CIA director and his deputies should be made to testify under oath, not only as to what they know about Russia's role in the WikiLeaks email dumps, but also who's inside the agency is behind the leaks to the Washington Post designed to put a cloud over the Trump presidency before it begins. You see, because agents and operatives of the CIA should be subject to lie detector tests to learn who's leaking to the anti-Trump press. I mean, if you're going to have it one way, why not have it the other? right? And what role did the CIA, the NED, and John McCain play in the overthrow of the democratically elected government of Ukraine in 2014? Does anybody know about that? I don't think so, right? Because we don't get entangled in anybody else's business, do we? The United States? No, we would never do anything like that. Why, we believe in open and free democracy. Isn't that what they all say? Isn't that what our non-representing representatives tell us in Congress? And when they spew the crap that comes out of their mouth every election cycle that never comes to fruition, but that people just need to hear and make them feel good, warm, and fuzzy to go push that button or pull that lever. So the illusion of choice can continue for that much longer. Oh, yeah. You got to love the United States and where we are today, folks. This was the Daily News Brief brought to you by thedailysheeple.com. I'm Joe Joseph. Have yourself a very pleasant evening, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.